the Planning Committee held on the 19th of August 2025. The following members are all present: Councillors Ali Callison, Ralph Barker, Arch Buchanan, Ross Clark, Jerry Convery, Margaret Cowie, Maureen Devlin, Colin Dewar, Mary Donnelly. We have apologies from Councillor Joe Fagan. Councillors Alistair Fulton and Shalene Handybode are present. Councillor Graham Horn is present. Councillor Cal Johnson Dempsey is present. Councillor Ross Lambie is present. Councillor Martin Lennon is not present. Thank you. Councillor Les MacDonald is present. We have apologies from Councillor David McLachlan, and Councillor Alan Faulkner is attending as a substitute. The following members are all present: Councillors Richard Nelson, Norman Ray, John Ross, Graham Scott, David Shearer. Councillor Helen Toner is not present. Thank you. Councillor David Watson is present. Thank you, and I'll pass you back to the Chair for today's business.
Thank you, Stuart. Before commencing today's business, I would ask members to note that the application referred to at item 10 for the erection of a residential development north of Beachfield Manor, Meekawirnock Road, Hamilton, has been deferred at the request of the applicant to allow them to enter into discussions concerning revisions to the proposed development. This will allow any proposed revisions to be fully considered and appropriate procedures to be followed, after which the application will be resubmitted for consideration at a future meeting of this committee. I would also ask members to note that the application to referred at item 11 for the change of use of a nursery to retail and professional service units at 51 Mackin Road, Larkhall, has also been withdrawn at the request of the applicant. So if you can please remove those agenda items. And furthermore, I would ask members to note that items 5 and 6 on the agenda will be presented together before being determined separately, as will items 16 and 17. We'll then move into today's agenda items. Agenda item number 1 is any declarations of interest. No any declarations of interest. Agenda item number 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting, which are held on the 17th of June 2025. These are submitted for approval as a correct record. These on pages 5 to 10. I will move that as a correct record.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Anyone otherwise minded? Thank you. Agenda item number 3 then is the local place plan, Stonehouse, Straven and Glassford and Lanark. These on pages 11 to 14. And I'll ask Fraser, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this paper is for members to note and confirms that community-produced local place plans have been submitted for Stonehouse, Lanark, as well as for Straven and Glassford, and these are available to view on the Council's web pages. Local place plans were introduced by the 2019 Planning Acts, and while take-up has been limited across the country, they do provide an opportunity for communities to feed into the local development process, and the documents form a part of the evidence reports that are submitted to the Scottish Government by planning authorities. We'd like to thank the groups that within these communities for committing the time to produce the local place plans, and note that the reports are available to view on the links that are in the reports that are being considered by members, and now these will form part of the evidence report that will go towards the production of the local development plan for South Lanarkshire. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. That item is just for noting. Therefore, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, please. Yep, okay. Agenda item number 4 then is application P240165 for the erection of housing development of 170 homes on undeveloped vacant land with landscaping, play areas, drainage, road layouts, new access arrangements and associated development at Station Road, Netherburn and Larkhall. These on pages 15 to 30 on your pack. Fraser.
Thanks, Chair. This application relates to a detailed planning application and it seeks permission for the erection of a residential development comprising 170 houses on vacant land within the settlement of Netherburn, which would be accessed from Annabelle Road and Station Road via priority junctions. The consultation responses are summarised in section 6 of the report, and there were no objections from statutory consultees, but it is noted that a total of 33 objections and 3 letters of support were received, with the relevant comments summarised in section 7. The site itself is not allocated as housing land in the development plan, but it is within the settlement boundary of Netherburn. And as such, the proposal accords with the spatial strategy set out in the local development plan and overall is consistent with the aims of the development plan. The layout, design and mix of housing on the site is appropriate and does not conflict with any local development planning considerations, and as such the proposal is recommended for approval, subject to the conclusion of an appropriate legal agreement to address infrastructure payments in respect of education, community housing and road requirements.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for questions or comments. Councillor Clark, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Fraser for the report. More so looking for re-clarification of points, much of which might already be in the report, but I think it's important that they, if they are restated, to make sure we're confident that the objections have been listened to and addressed. First of all, you've got kind of the objections which are based on amenity. You've got, about the array of identical crammed together new build houses and affecting the senior of the area. I take it there's no concerns there at all in terms of that type of amenity. You've also got kind of traffic and road network concerns and the impact upon them. I do see in the papers you've got in relation to the transport assessment was submitted, new priority junctions. I take it we're confident that that would kind of allay any concerns or any impact that would be had on the road network. And finally, you've got kind of the general concern on impact on services, and it's good to see kind of agreements in principle on contributions. Again, take it that we feel that that's adequate to address those concerns. Those concerns that would fall within the remit of the planning committee. So more so looking for kind of a re-clarification of those points.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. And it's not the points that well made, and yeah, they are issues that we have taken into consideration through the assessment of this planning application. The original proposal was, I think it was 230 units initially, which we did feel as if may have been a wee bit dense for the site itself. So there's been a significant reduction in the density. We've worked closely with colleagues in Rose, we've consulted with colleagues in education, we've considered the impact that it has within the sort of the community of Netherburn as well. Hopefully this will retain some of the facilities that exist within Netherburn and will help with the community to retain these facilities. So on the whole, we feel as if this is a proposal that will be good for Netherburn. There aren't any adverse issues in terms of the impact on infrastructure. The impacts that we can address will be covered through the Section 75 contributions. So on the whole, we are comfortable with this proposal, and that's why we're happy to bring the recommendation of approval back to you as members.
Thank you. Councillor Ross Lambie, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one on the proposed condition 11, which relates to the remediation works for coal mining legacy. I think on site there's a few mine shafts, and the coal board initially had objected to the proposal, but then withdrew their objection later on after further discussion with the applicant. The condition 11 essentially is a pre-commencement condition, so they have to do some mitigation measures to address any issues on site relating to the old coal mining works. I just wondered how we vet that information that we get. So when they come to discharge that condition and send us the proposal of what they're going to do, the records of what they've done on site, do we send that to the coal authority for them to come back and give it the okay? Thanks.
Yeah, that's how it works, Councillor Interno. I think it's the Mining Remediation Authority they're actually called now. So they will have engaged in the consultation process. They'll have flagged that up as an issue. They don't have an objection to it, but the information is submitted to us. We'll engage with them. They'll come back, and it's us as the planning authority who will make the final call on it. But certainly that's not a standard process in dealing with sites like this.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or comments, then the recommendation is to grant subject to conditions and the legal agreement. I will move that recommendation.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Thank you. Agenda items number 5 and 6. We'll take them together, but we'll take them Separate for approval. Application P240573 for the redevelopment of existing farm buildings to provide farm workers' dwellings, new agricultural buildings, estate office and main farmhouse with access, landscaping and associated infrastructure. Application to discharge conditions. And the planning consent P20147 and application P241137 to discharge conditions, and planning consent P201047 at Auchentibber Farm, Auchentibber Road, Blantyre, and these on pages 31 to 42. And I'll ask Fraser again.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, no, this application relates to a site which extends to approximately 11 hectares that sits within the Greenbelt, and it comprises agricultural fields, but as a major application it needs to be considered by the Planning Committee. Planning permission in principle was granted by the Planning Committee for the redevelopment of existing farm buildings to provide farm workers' dwellings, new agricultural buildings, estate office and a farmhouse, along with access, landscaping and associated infrastructure. And the current applications seek to discharge these conditions which were associated with the planning permission in principle. And they address matters such as layout, design, materials, boundary treatment, access and drainage. No objections have been submitted in relation to either application, and given that the principle of the development was established by the granting of the earlier permission, it is considered that the approval of matters specified in conditions for both applications is appropriate and that permission should be approved.
Thank you. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. If there are no questions, Councillor Mary Donnelly, please.
Just to welcome the application.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Lambie, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. Yeah. Again, I like the application. It's quite interesting, and they're obviously quite well-renowned architects that are doing it, and the site plan, the designs all look great. The only little point I'd make is it was submitted prior to NPF4, which is why it's happening. If we were to apply the NPF4 rules, I don't think we'd be able to get this kind of application through, which is a shame.
Obviously, the old cliche in terms of every application treated on its merits counts, but no, the information that was provided with this application would still be considered positively, even in a post-NPF4 world. There was a business case presented, there was the need for the workers' houses around this as well, so no, there wouldn't have been any change to the considerations.
Thank you, Fraser. Any further questions or comments? If there are no further questions or comments, then we'll take agenda item number 5 first. The recommendation then is to approve discharge of conditions. I will move.
I'll second it.
All agreed? Agenda item number 6 then. The recommendation is approved discharge of conditions and attached continuing conditions. I will move.
I'll second it.
All agreed? Thank you. We'll then move on, please, to agenda item number 7. This is application P240681 for the extension to Cloburn Quarry to allow for continued extraction and processing of hard rock at Cloburn Quarry, Thankert and Lanark. These are on pages 43 to 62. Fraser, please.
Thanks, Chair. This application seeks full planning permission for a 15-hectare extension to Cloburn Quarry, which is located on A73 to the south of Hindford Bridge and north of Thankerton. The proposal seeks to extend operations for a 42-year period, followed by a 2-year restoration phase. The report identifies several key planning considerations. Firstly is that the proposal is compliant with both the National Planning Framework and South Lanarkshire's Local Development Plan, particularly policies relating to mineral development, climate change, biodiversity and rural land use. With regard to environmental impact, assessments have been submitted covering noise, dust, blasting, lighting, landscape and visual effects, and it's concluded that impacts are acceptable, subject to conditions in relation to mitigation and monitoring. Landscape and visual impact has been evaluated through a landscape and visual impact assessment, and the site lies within the Upper Clyde Valley and Tinto Special Landscape Area. And while early phases will alter landforms and be visible from surrounding areas, the existing quarry already influences the landscape, and restoration plans aim to replicate natural contours and enhance biodiversity, with long-term visual impacts expected to be neutral or beneficial. Transport and road safety was addressed through consultation with Roads Development Management, and conditions are recommended to manage sight lines and vehicle access and road cleanliness. A Section 96 agreement will ensure upkeep of local roads, and the applicant will fund traffic signalling upgrades at Hindford Bridge. Community concerns were acknowledged with 68 objections and 62 letters of support received. Objections focused on visual intrusion, noise, dust, light pollution, road safety and a lack of need. The Cairngrive Action Group and Carmichael Community Council raised specific concerns which are addressed in the report's assessment section. The proposal includes legal obligations via Section 75 and Section 96 agreements, and these cover financial contributions to the South Lanarkshire Rural Communities Trust Fund, guarantees for site restoration and road maintenance responsibilities. A suite of planning conditions have also been proposed to manage environmental impact, operational controls and restoration commitments. A series of Section 42 applications have been submitted separately, and these will be presented to a future planning committee. But with regard to application P240681, it's recommended that planning permission be granted subject to the conditions set out on pages 54 to 59 and the successful conclusion of legal agreements under the Planning and Roads Acts. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for any questions or comments, please. Councillor Ross Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few concerns about this application I would like addressed first. First of all, it's an extension for over 40 years. It's quite a lengthy period of time. I would be looking for some sort of reassurance that we're sure that that length of extension is something that's absolutely necessary, and we're not, locking us into something for, over 4 decades. So that first of all. The second part of my questions would be based around the section on amenity. On 10.8, when it talks about the landscape and visual impact assessment, and then at the end of that 10.8, it has the sentence, where differences are identified, this was assessed as being largely due to variances in the assessment approach taken. It did not undermine the overall findings of the assessment. I was wondering if you could expand on that and maybe explain those differences a little bit. And thirdly, I'm also happy to come back in on any of it. 10.11, talks about the changes should be widely visible and seen over a period of several years. I do know it does say it to take place in the context of the existing quarry, but it says at the end of there, it's these locations that would experience the greatest level of change and significant adverse effects. First of all, like maybe some clarification on exactly what is changing, how much additional impact on the amenity will be, but it does sound quite serious when it says that would be significant adverse effects, and it talks about over a period of several years. How can you clarify how long several years is in this context, and why it would be acceptable to have those adverse impacts over that length of time? Because it's got to become a point where, although by nature and by definition that is temporary, it's still quite well to have those adverse impacts. So looking for some more clarification on those points.
Fraser?
Yeah, no, thanks, Councillor. As with a similar application, there was a lot of assessment that went into this, the proposal and the application. One thing is that the actual facility itself does have the materials that require this length of commitment, the consent that's required. We're aware of, it's an employment generator within the area. There's a lot of economic benefit from that use as well. And we had to assess that against what's the environmental, the amenity impacts that come on the back of that. We did engage specialist landscape consultants to provide information in terms of an assessment of the landscape impact, and their assessment was that the impact was acceptable. There isn't going to be a working face that's off the quarry that's going to be visible from nearby residential property, so it's still going to be contained within the workings of the quarry itself. There was quite a lot of trees that were recently removed from the site, and I think that did have an impact in terms of the visibility, but That wasn't something that is actually a planning consideration. It was just a change to the landscape. But in terms of the assessment that we went into this was very detailed, and at the end of it, there wasn't any considerations that have led us to any a recommendation, refusal, or a concern that this was going to have an unacceptable level of impact on any of the nearby residential properties. We have been carrying out monitoring and management and enforcement, and there's a number of sort of issues that are raised by residents. We pick these up with our colleagues from the road service, we deal with it through environmental health, and we deal with it through the planning considerations, and we address these as they arise, but there's nothing that's actually happened from the operation of these sites that have led us to take any formal enforcement action. But we'll continue to take the concerns that are raised by residents and deal with them accordingly. Tony, I don't know if you want to come in and maybe offer any more in terms of the visual impact and the impact on communities. So I'll call on my colleague Tony Finn.
Thanks, Fraser. So just to add to what Fraser was talking about there, there's a small number of properties that will be adversely affected during this period that we talk about. They'll experience the greatest level of change, but it will be in the short term. The development is taking place over 7 phases, and they'll be affected by the first 2 phases, so around about 5 to 10 years, if that. Fraser mentions as well that some of the trees that previously screened that part of the site from those properties were taken down, but new planting has already taken place, which when it's established will mask any impact in the longer term. So we're quite satisfied that any adverse effects are short term in nature, and longer term they'll be mitigated by the tree planting.
Thank you. Councillor Alec Allison, please.
Reading a report about...
Councillor Allison, just can you start again? You were just a wee bit late coming in there.
Sorry, where was I? Yeah, it's quite obvious from the report that there is quite a difference in the views being put forward by the local community. There is a very good action group being looking at the different issues they have, but there is equally a large number of letters of support. It's good to see the depth that the different parts of the council have went into, and the fact that none of them have objections makes it difficult for us to oppose this. It is a valued business for going forward. But there are a huge, and I'm pleased to say there are a huge number of conditions on this one to try and mitigate the effects that the local residents feel that it has. One, you've been talking about the difference. That was a hill, and I know I'm getting quite old now, but I can remember when it was a hill, and there has been a significant drop in the height already, and that will continue. Specifically, Fraser, the action group put out a letter recently highlighting 4 different issues. You've covered some of them, but I think it would be appropriate just maybe to answer that directly to us. Did Pitnane Council, Community Council, put in any comment, for instance? These planning conditions that you've put in there, one of the areas that the council does not have a good record on is enforcement of conditions. How are we going to ensure that these conditions are enforced? The reports that have to be drawn up in the next 3 months, if you like, are we carrying out the work to ensure that that's happening? Or is it the applicant who will be doing it and we accept what they're saying? Specifically, the noise difference they have heard, even up to now before this application change. The dust monitoring you've said the report says isn't too bad, but we're told by residents that when they put their washing out, they are seeing dust. So how are we going to ensure that the conditions are made? 2 final points. When we approved a coal mining application a number of years ago to transport coal to Renstree, there was funding made available for the upkeep of the road, I believe. Why are we not doing the same here? I accept there's work to be done at the lights, but why are we not doing the same here? And you've also indicated that there are issues for some community members. Is there any way we can put a condition in regarding community benefit funds to mitigate these problems? Sorry, that's long. I think I've covered everything.
Thank you, Councillor Allison. We'll bring in Fraser Carlin first, and then maybe Tony and Fraser from Rhodes. Hang on. Fraser?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. With your initial point, Councillor Allison, yeah, no, Carmichael Community Council, they're referred to in the report. No, they did submit an objection to the application. But again,
Fraser. It was Pitnane that the question was on.
Oh.
We'll check that out.
We can check that out. Yeah, not in terms of the detail, but no, Carmichael is referred to here. Regarding the monitoring of the existing conditions that cover the site, we have officers that are engaged in this process from planning, roads and from environmental services. We respond to issues as and when they have raised. As I mentioned, there haven't been issues so far that have led us to taking formal enforcement actions, but they will continue to be monitoring and will continue to take the comments that come in from residents or from the local community groups. Regarding the conditions that are imposed, yeah, no, the reports will need to be carried out by the applicant. The information will be submitted by the applicant. We will then assess these. We'll then monitor the submissions to us. The last thing we will do is nod them through. We will carry out a thorough and rigorous assessment of them. We will engage with colleagues within, again, environmental services and with roads to ensure that the relevant legislation is addressed as well, so it goes beyond planning. And issues around the dust and noise, they are issues that are continually picked up through our own environmental services teams as well. Issues around the impact on the roads is picked up by roads colleagues. So it's more than just the planning services involved in the monitoring of this facility. Regarding the previous use, we can maybe call in Fraser around some of this, but as far as I'm aware, there's been upgrades to the A73 that have been carried out, but as well as there's proposals to improve the junction around Hindford Bridge. And this then, that makes this acceptable. So again, it's a treating each application on its own merits, but the previous proposals for the coal proposal were different from what we have in this scheme that's presented to us today. So I don't know if, Fraser, you want to add to that.
Thanks, Fraser. Yeah, I mean, in terms of contributions for the road, the access leading on to the A70, that there is a section 96 that covers any sort of damage in that vicinity, and that's where the turning movements will be at their greatest. On the A70 itself, that's a A-class road, obviously, and that carries all types of traffic. So it wouldn't be necessarily fair to get upgrades from the quarry. In terms of the Hindford Bridge, we know that there's a large proportion of the trips would be heading up towards the railhead, and that's something that we would really support to get traffic off the road network. The traffic signals have been looked at in a lot of detail. The survey's been done, and there's an agreement that there would be a replacement of the prom, which means that the timings of that can be amended to suit. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Any further from yourself, Fraser? No? Okay, I'll take Councillor Barker, please.
Thank you, Chair. And must commend the amount of work that has gone into this. Considering this application, all mineral applications are divisive, and this is divisive. However, it is a business that's operated well over 100 years, so anybody in that area knows it's a mineral extraction area. I'll leave that out now. I just have one, very minor question on the conditions, and that is on page 54 and 0.05, and it is just about the use of roads restricted to the A road, and it was just unless in an emergency. I just wondered, is there any way of defining what an emergency is? It sounds like an emergency to life and limb rather than a commercial emergency.
Fraser, I'll let you come in, Fraser. Thank you, Councillor Barker.
No, I can assure it, no, it's not a commercial emergency. This would be something that's a life and limb matter. No, that's how we would address that. Yeah.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to make any further comments, if you please indicate now. I've got a few on the screen, and I'll take Councillor Shearer, please.
Thank you, Chair. Given that we are being asked to grant permission for 42 years, and we would not, 42 years ago, we would not have the knowledge we have now and would have not put in conditions that are here today, I feel it necessary to have a break somewhere in that 42 years to renew the application. We've done that before with other quarries applications where they wanted, I think it was 25 or something, and we have agreed to a break where they renew their application. That allows us to keep on top of any issues. It allows us to better monitor, because the applicant would be more inclined, knowing that it's back up for renewal, to obey the rules and regulations applied to it. And we have it within our power, as it's been done before. I'm just wondering whether that would be an appropriate break, say at the 20-year mark, something like that, to come back in for the renewal of their application at that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shearer. Fraser?
No, there is an issue we have to deal with the application that's presented to us. The case that's presented to us, there are still 42 years of working materials from within the site itself. I think for the council to unilaterally impose such a restriction without a justification around it would take us into issues around it would be ultra various and it would be a challengeable decision. The conditions that we have imposed on this are such that we can monitor them for the period, the 42 years of the consent itself. If there are breaches of those conditions that are occurring on a regular basis, we can take enforcement action and effectively bring the matter to a close here as well. What I would note, I'm not speaking on, say, on behalf of the applicants, but there's significant levels of investment that needs to go into these type of facilities, and the funding of the project and the committing to the capital investments, and the fact that there is 40 years of product still to be worked out from the site. The monitoring would allow us to, if this development is unacceptable, we could, we can step in, we can close the uses, whether that's through issues through roads legislation, environmental health legislation, or planning legislation. That's what that monitoring will allow us to do. The application as submitted is for 40 years of use. We feel as if we've got the mitigating conditions that are in there that will allow that, that make that acceptable, and it would be a different proposal to reduce the period of time. That we don't have a case that it would stand up to scrutiny that why we were wanting to reduce that.
Chair, can I come back on that? Thank you. Fraser, I understand what you've said, and yes, we do have the enforcement powers, and I would expect the council to use those powers if there was any breaches. However, my issue is that circumstances change over 42 years. We may not be able to predict a change, and that's where I would think it would be handy to have that break, not to say they stop work, but just renew their permission at the 20-year mark, and that would allow us to deal with any issues that crop up that we are not aware of at the moment, because none of us are fortune tellers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We'll come back to you if you want to make a formal proposal. I think Fraser's already gave his answer, so I'm not going to come back to Fraser again. We'll come back in a moment to see if you've got a proposal. Councillor Mary Donnelly, please.
Thank you, Chair. You're indicating about the change in the roads in the A70. When is that taking place?
It's the A73, isn't it? Yeah, so it's A73, Councillor, no, but there's the general maintenance of that road. It doesn't require the upgrades that went with that previous consent that Councillor Allison was referring to. And there is an upgrade around Hindford Bridge, which is part of the proposal as submitted to, so that's covered through a Section 96 agreement.
Thank you. Yep.
Have we communicated with the action group on their concerns?
Yeah, the community group have been very good in terms of keeping us updated in terms of activity on the site itself. We've responded to concerns when they've been raised with it. They've submitted their representations. We've had meetings early on in the process with the community group itself as well. We'll continue to take their concerns as they come forward and deal with them appropriately. But in terms of the application, they have submitted their objection and it's taken into consideration through the assessment of the proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, supplementary.
Thanks for letting me back in, Chair, and thank you very much for the answers to my previous questions. Although I don't think they do provide enough kind of confidence in the application around the impact upon amenity. 5 to 10 years, again, might be by definition short term, but I still think that's quite a while for these adverse impacts to be there. So it's for that reason I would like to propose an amendment that the application be refused because of its impact upon amenity and local communities.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. We'll come back to you just in a moment. Can I just check to see if we've got a seconder to that? Councillor Mary Donnelly will second that. I'll come back to you just to check the wording in a moment. We'll take Councillor Allison and then Councillor Lambert, then we will bring this matter to a close. Councillor Allison, please.
Asked about was community benefit, whether it is in the report, but I don't see anything conditioned that could supply benefit to these local communities that will feel the greatest effect from this. And one thing I forgot to ask, it says that the site will be restored at the end of this to its original condition. Wee bit tongue-in-cheek, but does that mean you're going to rebuild the hill?
I'll bring Fraser in just in a moment, but I think just if you look at page 53, it does say that the financial contributions towards the South Lanarkshire Rural Communities Trust Fund, so money will go back into the community.
That's South Lanarkshire wide. I was meaning far more locally for the affected property.
I've asked Fraser just to come in on that point just for a second, then.
Yeah, no, that's the fund that's operated through our own Economic Development College. It would focus on activity that's related to the development itself. Yes, it is South Lanarkshire wide, but it would be the funding would be to address projects in the area that may come forward. The applicant is committed to making a contribution towards that, and the details will be finalised through the Section 75 agreement.
Thank you. Councillor Ross Lambie, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just picking up on the point of the 42-year duration of the licence. There are those kind of durations for a reason, in that the sums of money that you require to invest in this type of industry are very long term. And I think if we're going to go and try and cut that in half or reduce it down, it introduces risk into the business models of these industries. And I have a concern that might actually impact the future of the employment in the area. So I'd caution against that. In terms of the point about, yeah, of course, there might be new environmental concerns come up in future, but there are government bodies who regulate this space, and they will look after that for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lambie. I agree. It's a valued employer in the area, so it would be a great loss to that area. Bring in Councillor Shearer, and then I will bring this matter to a conclusion. Councillor Shearer, please.
I would like to move that there is an extra condition that this application be reviewed after 20 years of operation.
Two motions. So that's two motions.
Yeah, there's two motions.
Two motions, okay. Two amendments. So the motion will be the paper, so there'll be two amendments. So.
Additional condition.
Additional condition that the application be reviewed after 20 years.
And have you got a seconder for that? There is no seconder, so hang on, Councillor Allison. Councillor Allison.
I'll second that, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Allison. We'll just check the wording with the clerk and then we'll come back to you. Just for clarity then, I'm going to go with the recommendation, which is to grant subject to conditions under Section 75 agreement and Section 96 agreement.
And I'll second that, Chair.
Okay. The other two then become the amendments, which will go against each other. I'll just wait, Stuart just doing some procedural work and then we will return.
Yep, so Councillor Shearer, Tony Finn has referred... No? No, that's fine, okay. Okay, so we're going to have two votes. So the first vote will be the Second Amendment versus the First Amendment. So Amendment 2, which we will take as the amendment, which has been moved by Councillor Shearer and seconded by Councillor Allison. Is that an additional condition be included that the application be reviewed after a period of 20 years? And Amendment 1, which we will take as the motion. Councillor Clark, if I can just clarify, I believe the amendment is to refuse the application on the grounds of impact on amenity, and you also referred to something about community that I didn't. And the impact on the local community. Okay, so that will be the motion, Amendment 1.
Before we open the vote, does anybody need any clarification on everybody happy? Okay.
Okay, the vote is now live. If I can ask members to please indicate your voting preference. Okay, it looks as if one member has still to cast their vote. If I can please ask all members cast their vote. All members have now cast their vote, which I will now close. So 3 members that have voted in favour of the motion. 9 in favour of the amendment. And 10 members have abstained. I therefore advise that Amendment 2 has been carried. So Amendment 2 was the additional condition for the review after a period of 20 years. So that will now, in the second vote, be the amendment. Again, which has been moved by Councillor Shearer and seconded by Councillor Allison. The motion is to grant planning consent subject to the conditions specified in the report and a Section 75 and 96 agreement, which has been proposed by Councillor Nelson and seconded by Councillor Convery. Okay, apologies for the slight delay. The vote is now open. If members can please cast their vote. All members have now cast their vote and I'm closing the vote. 14 members have voted in favour of the motion and 8 in favour of the amendment. I therefore declare the motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you. We will then move on to agenda item number 8, please. That is application P240856 for the erection of house for retiring farm worker at land 66 metres north east of Crown House Farm, Strother Highway, Sanford, Straven. These on pages 63 to 68. I'm going to ask Fraser again, please.
Thanks, Chair. This application is seeking planning permission for the erection of a new dwelling house for a retiring farm worker in a field to the southwest of Sanford. The proposed dwelling is located some distance from the main farm complex at Avon Bank, and 2 letters of objection have been received citing amenity and privacy concerns. The proposal has not been supported with the necessary justification as to why the dwelling needs to be located within this particular location. Furthermore, the supporting information that has been received confirms that the proposed dwelling will no longer form part of the farm holding and that the farm itself is to be sold on to a new purchaser, and therefore the proposed dwelling does not relate to the retirement succession plan of a farm holding as required by local development planning policy. Therefore, within the context of the relevant local development plan policies, the proposals seek to introduce an inappropriate form of development and would not be consistent with a range of policies set out in the local development plan. And as such, for the reasons in section 11 of the report, it is recommended that application P240856 should be refused.
Thank you, Fraser. I'll open up for questions or comments, please, if there's any. Councillor Norman Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify in my own mind, part of this, the sort of provision for succession that we've seen in previous applications, or not, as the case may be in some cases, I'm assuming from this that only applies where the succession is within the family, and therefore because it's being sold in this case, that's why that doesn't apply. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, fine. Councillor Alec Allison, please.
The same lines, Chair. It says it's for a farm worker, yet it says that the person applying, then the farm worker, is then going to sell the rest of the holding. How can he be a farm worker and the owner? And are we differentiating between a retiring farmer and someone who happens to have worked on the land all their life and disadvantaging them? Just a little bit more clarity around what's happening there, please.
Okay, Councillor Allison, I'll ask David Russell just to come in. David?
Thanks, Councillor Allison. The plan, as in the submission, is for the existing farm owners to retire into this dwelling, which is on the current farm, within the current farm boundary, but to separate that from the rest of the farm and then sell the farm onto a third party. So So the submission says retiring farm workers, because technically they are currently farm workers and they are planning to retire. The problem from a policy point of view is that at that point they would no longer, it's not a retirement succession, they're selling off the farm and before they do so carving off a section to build a house in.
Thank you, David. Any further questions or comments, please? If there are no further questions or comments, then the recommendation is to refuse. I will move that recommendation to refuse.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 9 then, please, is application P24 1236 for construction and operation of renewable energy development comprising of 22 wind turbines, solar array, battery energy storage system and associated infrastructure at land either side of the M74 immediately to the north-west of Abington Service Station and approximately 4.5 kilometres south-west of Douglas. These on pages 69 to 80. Fraser again, please.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application concerns a large-scale renewable energy development proposed by M74 Limited and comprising 22 wind turbines, a solar array and a battery energy storage system on land near Abington and Douglas. While the proposal aligns with national climate and energy goals, particularly those outlined in National Planning Framework 4 and South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan, several critical issues have led to the Council recommending an objection. Issues of objection include the fact that Historic Environment Scotland object to the adverse impacts on 4 Schedule Ancient monuments, and this brings the development into conflict with National Planning Policy number 7, as well as Local Development Plan Policy 14. The Ministry of Defence and the National Air Traffic Service Safeguarding has raised objections due to potential interference with radar systems, low-flying aircraft's route, and the Eskdale Muir seismology recording facility, and this conflicts with NPF Policy 11 as well as LDP Policy 19. Nature Scot object, and although mitigation measures have been proposed, Nature Scot's objection remains unless they are fully implemented, and this brings the proposal into conflict with National Planning Framework Policies 3, 4 and 5 and LDP Policy 14. A request was submitted to the Energy Consent Unit of the Scottish Government requesting more time to address the unresolved objections and policy conflicts, but unfortunately the response provided stated that in view of the public commitments made by Scottish ministers to improve the average timescales for determining Electricity Act applications, that our request for an extension would be considered unreasonable. So therefore, while this is an unfortunate aspect of the decision-making approach taken with this proposal, it is considered that these outstanding objections are such that South Lanarkshire Council is asked to submit an objection to the Energy Consent Unit, and the reasons for such are set out in section 12 of the report presented to members. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Any questions or comments? Councillor Lambie, please.
Just to thank the Planning Department and welcome their objection to it. It's quite a significant solar blanketing of the land there, and Historic Scotland have come back and objected to it for its impact on scheduled monuments, etc. So, yeah, I welcome our objection. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Lambie. Totally agree with the sentiments as well. Councillor Maureen Devlin, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's actually just a question I want to ask about the consultees, and I recognise all the different ones that's here. But is there any way that we can request that the fire and rescue are asked, is put forward as a consultee? Because I think that's quite obvious, you know, an omission. I don't know if we can do that, Fraser. I was only asking. Thanks.
I think we've had conversations with this before, but I'll ask Fraser from his professional opinion. But Fraser.
Position, again, we're not the consenting authority on this, so the consultation will need to be carried out by the Scottish Government. From our experience, though, the fire and rescue don't tend to get involved in this. They would consider it more a health and safety issue that would pick through that legislation as opposed to planning. But on this instance, we're not the consulting body, and we're a consultee. Yeah, no.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin. Councillor Davy Watson, please. I forgot you were here, Davy.
Yeah, so Just a general question, and not specifically on this application, but it's occurring time and time again, and it's in relation to particularly the best side of this application. We keep waiting on a guideline from the Scottish Government of what they see is appropriate for BESS, and at the moment we're taking decisions in the dark to an extent other than existing policies. But this is new technology, and really it's about time they stepped up and issued some sort of guidelines for local authorities to work to regarding where these are suitable, safety aspect and all the rest of it. Also, I mean, these are, I dare say, lucrative facilities for landowners, but when we see BESS coming through, there's no indication of Section 75, and again, we've mentioned this previously at committee, and it probably just finally, and again, alluding to what the directors just said as well about timescales, do you envisage a time, because of the contracted time scale for some of these applications when they get to the Scottish Government, it will not be time to bring a paper to committee before a response has got to be submitted to the Scottish Government? Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm sorry, you're looking. I know there's a truncated.
We'll ask Fraser just to answer, because I don't think he's quite grasping what you're trying to say. So let Fraser come in.
Basically, because there's a truncated timescale between an applicant submitting something to the Scottish Government and them taking that decision, and if we as a consultee on that, we might have a limited time to respond. And basically, my question is, do you envisage a time where, if it falls in between that truncated time, the application going to the Scottish Government, that we might not have a chance for any discussion at committee? Thanks.
Fraser.
No, thanks, Councillor Watt. No, I would start obviously. I think you're doing yourself a disservice by saying that we're considering these applications in the dark. There's quite a good local development planning context as well as what's within national planning framework as well, and that informs the decision of the planning authority. And members of here have given a very good assessment and scrutiny of proposals as they're coming forward. Regarding the guidance coming from the Scottish Government, it would be helpful. And we are seeking this because it is a new and emerging technology, but we still have a good policy context that we can consider these proposals, and that's the reason why we're recommending an objection to this one, because it hasn't addressed planning considerations. So there's possibly a need for more guidance coming from the Scottish Government in terms of the absolute need for these developments, the scale of the developments and where they should be taking place, and we'll welcome that engagement when it comes through with Scottish Government. In terms of what we're providing to you as members through each application is that I think it's appropriate that we bring it to you as members to consider whether you want to object to the proposals. On this instance, we'd felt as if it was worthwhile engaging with the consultees to see if we could address these, but the Scottish Government were going down the line of we need to get a decision, we need to get a response from you to the Energy Consents Unit. So that's why this objection goes forward on this one. I think it's preferable that we bring these to you as the committee, because what can happen in terms of the objections that the council submits is it can trigger a public inquiry, and that can be quite a difficult process and actually quite an expensive process to go through as well. So that's why it's providing you with the opportunity that we have an issue here. We see the issue in terms of the planning legislation and the planning policy around it. We're allowing the planning committee to make a decision about and objecting to it, but hopefully a guidance will come forward that just gives us a bit more information to inform our decisions. Very quickly, if the planning consent is granted on this by the Scottish Government, a Section 75 bill will be required. That's what would kick, in the same way that we get Section 75 contributions through wind farm proposals and the like as well. So that would be addressed through that.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments then? If there are no further questions or comments, the recommendation then is that the Scottish Government Energy Consents Unit is informed that for the reasons stated, South Lanarkshire Council object to the granting of consent under Section 36 of the Electricity Act 1989.
I'm saying that, yeah.
All agreed? Thank you. Before we then move on to agenda item number 12, I'm going to ask for a recess and we'll meet back here at 11:10. Thank you. I'm going to ask Stuart just to run through the sediment again since we had a recess for a couple of minutes. Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. So now that we've reconvened, I confirm that the following members are present. Councillors Alec Allison, Ralph Barker, Arch Buchanan, Ross Clark, Jerry Convery, Margaret Cowie, Maureen Devlin, Colin Dewar, Mary Donnelly, Alistair Fulton, Shalene Handybod, Graham Horn, Cal Johnson Dempsey, Ross Lambie, Leslie MacDonald, Richard Nelson, Norman Ray, John Ross, Graham Scott, David Shearer, David Watson, and also Councillor Alan Faulkner as a substitute. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. 10 and 11 have been removed, so we'll then move on to agenda item number 12, please. Is application P250360 for the erection of two-storey house for agricultural worker at land 200 metres south east of Newtown Farm, Newton Highway, Straven, pages 103 to 110. Fraser.
Thanks, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for a two-storey dwelling house on land adjacent to Newton Farm to the south of Straven. The proposed dwelling is located in an open field approximately 100 metres to the south of the main road, and the two-storey dwelling would contain 5 double bedrooms in addition to an office, living areas, kitchen, dining and other accommodation. The applicant has stated in the submission that the proposed dwelling is related to new agricultural operations taking place on a related agricultural business in Bishopton. However, as the operations at this site are not fully established, it cannot be satisfactorily demonstrated that it necessitates the provision of a permanent dwelling house at this location. Furthermore, the size of the dwelling and garden proposed for a new agricultural operation, which comprises 17 acres of open field with a single agricultural shed on it, appears to be excessive and out of scale with the surrounding area. Therefore, within the context of the local development plan policies, the proposals seek to introduce an inappropriate form of development and would not be consistent with a range of policies set out within the development plan. And as such, for the reasons set out in section 11 of the report, it's recommended that application P240360 should be refused.
Thank you. Open up for questions or comments, please. If there are no questions or comments, then the recommendation is to refuse. I will go with the recommendation.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed. Thank you. Agenda item number 13. Is application P250388 for installation of a battery energy storage system with associated infrastructure at plot 4A, Hull-Lochrock Road, East Kilbride. These are on pages 111 to 120. Fraser.
Thanks, Chair. This application proposes the installation of a 20 megawatt battery energy storage system on a 0.9 hectare undeveloped site designated as core industrial and business land in East Kilbride. The site is part of the designated core industrial and business area, and the proposed BES does not generate permanent employment or support industrial activity, and as such this conflicts with policy 8 of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan, which prioritises employment generating uses. The proposal also fails to meet the criteria for non-conforming uses under policy ICD2, particularly regarding the impact on the availability and quality of industrial land. The applicant submitted an economic note arguing that the site has been marketed for some time without interest, suggesting low demand. However, the Planning Authority found that this evidence was insufficient to justify a departure from policy, especially given the strategic importance of the land. National Planning Framework 4 supports renewable energy and infrastructure development, but the proposal does not meet the socio-economic benefit criteria outlined in policies 11 and 26. The proposal also fails to demonstrate that the site is essential for energy storage infrastructure, especially given its proximity to the East Kilbride substation, which is 680 metres away, which could be served by alternative locations. The report concludes that while BES technology is supported in principle, its siting must be justified and compatible with local development plan priorities, and in this case the proposal offers limited economic benefit but would lead to the loss of valuable industrial land, and as such fails to meet key planning policies, which leads to the reasons for refusal set out on pages 118 of the report presented to members today.
Thank you, Fraser. Any questions or comments, please? There are no questions or comments. The recommendation is to refuse. I will move the recommendation.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed. Application, agenda item number 14 is application P250432 for the change of use of house Class 9 to Children's Residential Care Home to accommodate 4 children at 36 Wellhall Road in Hamilton. These on pages 121 to 128. Fraser, please.
Thanks, Chair. The planning permission is sought for the change of use of a house to a children's residential care home at 36 Wellhall Road, Hamilton. The property would provide care for up to 4 children, with 2 staff members present, working on a rotational basis, being present at any time. No changes to the external appearance of the property are proposed. The consultation responses are summarised in section 6 of the report and include comments from the Care Inspectorate, who advised that they would inspect the property before operations commenced as part of their overseeing role for this type of facility. The management of the facility is entirely separate from the land use planning considerations. 59 objections and a petition have been submitted which object to the proposal, and the issues raised are summarised in section 7 of the report. However, while noting the strength of feeling within the local community, in land use planning terms, this change of use, which seeks to provide 4 young people with accommodation that is as close to a home environment as possible, is acceptable. In addition to this, it is noted that there are no detailed issues related to the proposal that would lead to the planning authority seeking to resist this change of use. So as such, in land use planning terms, the proposal is an appropriate form of development within a residential area, and for the reason, application P250432 is recommended for approval.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, please? Councillor Collinger.
Thanks, Chair. There's been, as Fraser's outlined, there's been 59 objections and a petition against submitted by local residents concerned about the potential impact on amenity of this proposal, and I believe that these do carry some merit. There is a risk of antisocial behaviour being attracted to the area as a result of the proposal, and in the supporting statement, the young adults don't appear to have any curfew, and I would think that that would be certainly of issue to local residents, where people could be coming back at any times of night. In addition, I pass this property on a very regular basis as a pedestrian. The driveway of the property is directly opposite the junction of Wellhall Road and Hilton Bank Street. Therefore, no one will be able to park directly outside the property. And there's also a bus stop within 10 metres of the driveway, again restricting the use of Wellhall Road for additional parking. I don't think that having passed it myself, that the actual driveway that's provided, I don't think it's realistic that there would be 6 parking places able to be used there. Wellhall Road is busy with traffic at most times of the day, except the very early hours of the morning. No one parks there for any length of time due to this, and obviously buses and HGVs use the road in addition to normal traffic of cars, bikes, etc. I simply can't see how, looking at the parking provision, that it's deemed sufficient for full-time staff and visitors to interact safely with other road users and pedestrians, and would ask for comment from roads on this issue. And additionally, I would also ask, just for clarification at 6.2, would it be correct that the Care Inspector would only carry out an assessment of the property's suitability should planning permission be granted?
Thank you, Councillor Dewar. Just through that, I think the question you got to there was just in 6.2. That's what you're looking for the officers to come back on, because some of the other stuff that you mentioned right at the start is not for planning, and it's been passed by the Care Inspectorate. That's not for us to decide here as a planning authority. I'll ask Fraser to come in your point in 6.2, but some of the other information you brought up at the start is not for the planning authority. I'll ask Fraser just to come in.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. No, we did consult with the Care Inspector and they didn't offer any objections to the proposal. What they will, if consent is granted, they will assess the actual internal configuration around it. Again, that wouldn't be a consideration of the planning authority. In terms of the actual property itself, it does have it's a large area of hard standing that sits to the front of it, which could accommodate a number of vehicles. There would be 2 members of staff, as the suggestion, that would be on at any one period of time around that. So it's not, while there are 6 employees, it's 2 members of staff that are on over a shift period as well. But no, the 4 young adults that would be at the property is, we wouldn't be expected that they would have vehicles. In terms of the actual, the use itself, it doesn't raise significant concerns from our discussions with Rose colleagues, doesn't throw up any planning considerations. So the care inspectorate will manage the operations of the property as well. So issues around curfew, which go beyond planning, completely beyond planning, are matters that will be picked up through the management of the facility itself.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments, please? If there are no further questions or comments, then I will go with the recommendation, which is grant subject to the conditions.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Thank you. We'll then move on, please, to agenda item 15. This application P250517 for section 42 application for variation of condition 1 and deletion of condition 22 of P220349 plan permission in principle to allow for any detailed design for further approval matters specified in conditions at Larkhall Community Growth Area and Summerlee Road in Larkhall, and these are on pages 129 to 142. Fraser.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this application is a section 42 application which seeks to vary a condition, and it's been submitted in relation to part of the Larkhall Community Growth Area. In effect, the application seeks to amend and update the conditions attached to previous permissions for the site, most notably application P220349. The site's within the Larkhall Community Growth Area, and therefore the principle of residential development in this location has been established. Phase 1 is complete, Phase 2 is nearing completion, and the undeveloped areas Phases 3 and 4 will be subject to further approval of matters specified in condition applications covering detailed matters such as house design, layout, landscaping and habitat management. 14 objections have been submitted in relation to the application, and the issues have been summarised in section 7 of the report. The proposed section 42 application is acceptable in relation to the development plan policies, and no issues have been raised in consultation that would impact on the relevant planning consent being extended. So therefore it is recommended that planning permission in principle be granted for application P250517, subject to the relevant conditions that are set out on pages 135 to 140. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Any questions or comments, please? If there are no questions or comments, then the recommendation then is to grant subject to conditions. I will move.
I'll second, Chair.
All agreed. Agenda items number 16 and 17 we'll take together, but we'll take the decisions separately. Application P250529 for installation of flue to rear elevation of existing building, and application P250711 for external alterations associated with erection of a flue to the rear at 15 Montgomery Street in East Kilbride, pages 143 to 156. Fraser.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, there are 2 applications. One seeks planning permission, the other listed building consent for the installation of a flue to the rear elevation of a Category C listed building on the west side of Montgomery Street in East Kilbride. In development plan terms, the site is both part of the designated local centre and the East Kilbride Village Conservation Area. 10 letters of representation were received during consultation, and 6 objections raising concerns about noise and odours and the impact of the flue on the character and appearance of the listed building. The proposed location of the flue is screened on 3 sides by existing building and is not considered to have a significant visual impact on either the listed building or the wider conservation area. In terms of noise and odours, Environmental Services have no objection to the proposal, subject to a condition being imposed. Both the planning application and the application for listed building consent are considered appropriate development in terms of the relevant policies in the development plan, as well as national legislation and guidance. As such, for the reasons set out in section 12 and subject to the conditions set out in section 11 of each report, it is recommended that the application should be approved.
Thank you, Fraser. Is there any questions on agenda items 16 or 17? No questions or comments then. Agenda item 16 is application P250529. The recommendation then is to grant subject to conditions. I will move.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed. Agenda item number 17, application P250711. The recommendation is to grant subject to condition. I will move.
I'll second it, Chair.
Thank you. All agreed. We will then move on to agenda item number 18, please, and that is application P250555 for installation of a battery energy storage system, associated infrastructure at Langlands Gate, East Kilbride, pages 157 to 166. Fraser.
Thanks, Chair. As with the previous application, this application sits within a designated core industrial and business area. The proposal includes battery containers, substations, transformer station, water tank, security fencing and accesses from Langlands Drive. The Planning Committee has recommended to refuse the application based on several key issues. Firstly, the proposal conflicts with local development plan policies and the National Planning Framework 4. Specifically, it fails to comply with policies aimed at preserving employment land. The development would result in the permanent loss of designated industrial land without generating long-term employment and would undermine the area's business activity. Policy ICD2 of the Local Development Plan allows for non-conforming uses in industrial areas under strict conditions. However, the proposal does not meet these criteria. It lacks sufficient evidence of marketing for Class 4, 5 or 6 uses and would negatively impact on the supply of marketable land. While the proposal aligns with broader renewable energy goals, its location within a core business area is deemed inappropriate. The Scottish Government supports energy storage infrastructure, but the report concludes that this specific site is not essential for such use, especially given the scarcity of industrial land. Consultation raised further concerns, with Roads and Transportation Services objecting to the inadequate access, design, vehicle tracking issues and insufficient space for construction logistics. In conclusion, the proposal is considered incompatible with the development plan. It would erode the industrial land supply, fail to deliver permanent employment and does not justify its location within a designated business area. The Planning Committee is therefore advised to refuse the application on the grounds of conflict with multiple local and national planning policies as set out in the report presented to members today.
Thank you, Fraser. Any questions or comments, please? Councillor Ross Clark.
Thank you again, Chair, and thank you to Fraser for the report. More of a comment and a question. Similar to what's already been said in other applications, I would like to welcome the Plan Department's assessment of this. And again, similar applications. It's good to see that we are assessing these appropriately, that we are either granting or not objecting to it, where, again, it would be beneficial or there is no adverse impacts, but also that we are prepared to carry out a detailed assessment and either refuse or object where it would have that adverse impact. So I'd just like to welcome the assessments of these applications.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Any further questions or comments? Absolutely right. I think the consistent approach by the Planning Department and also this Planning Committee shows that we are taking these matters absolutely seriously. So therefore, I will take the recommendation, which is to refuse.
I'll second it, Chair.
All agreed? Thank you. Agenda item number 19 is application P250598 for change of use of flatted dwelling to short-term let. It's retrospective at a flat 3, 2 School Street, Hamilton, pages 167 to 172. Fraser.
Thanks, Chair. This application relates to a flatted dwelling located on School Street, Hamilton. Retrospective planning permission is sought for the change of use to the flat to a short-term let, but no external alterations are proposed. There have been no objections submitted in relation to the proposal, but with regard to the principle of this development, it is considered that a short-term let would have the potential to cause a significant adverse effect on local amenity by way of privacy impacts and disturbance to neighbours who share the common areas and facilities. The Council has consistently taken the view that flats which share communal areas, such as the application site, are not appropriate locations for short-term let accommodation due to the real and perceived impacts on privacy, security and the neighbourly expectations of occupation. As such, the justification offered does not outweigh the policy conflict or mitigate the identified amenity impacts. The application is recommended for refusal as it would result in a detrimental impact upon neighbouring residential property and privacy and is not a suitable property for the use proposed.
Any questions or comments, please? Councillor Ross Clark.
Thank you again, Chair. You've been very generous today. I just picking up on the point under 4.1 that no appeal was submitted in relation to the refusal of the application. I mean, has there been much communication from the applicant since it was refused, or has it simply been just brought to committee because it was requested? It does seem a bit strange. It would come. Obviously, I get it was requested, but it would seem strange it would come to committee if the applicant hasn't appealed it.
Just before Fraser came in, it was requested by Councillor Gavin Keep, and it's a decision between myself and the head of service whether we allow that to come to committee. And I think it's right and proper that if a member asks for some to come to committee, then I would never refuse it to come to committee. I don't know if Fraser wants to add anything to that, but that's why it's here, is because it was referred by Councillor Gavin Keep. Councillor Handibod.
This is a retrospective application, so it's already been operating, is my understanding, and it's fully licensed. There's also no objections. In fact, there's letters of support from the other 3 residents in the building who are satisfied and have had no complaints whatsoever with the running of it. So I would like to ask that we reconsider this due to the support from the neighbours.
Is that a proposal?
Yes.
Okay. You will be deviating from the local development plan. So our local development plan doesn't say that, and we will be deviating away from that. The committee would be doing that. And then it would be consistent with the other approaches that this committee has taken at this stage, because we have refused other ones in the past. So I would ask you just to think about that, but you're more than welcome to make your proposal. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Cowie. I'll come back to you just in a moment. I'll bring in Councillor John Ross, please.
Yes, thanks, Chair. While I probably think on this occasion we haven't had any complaints, I think the policy that we have regarding this is the right policy, and I would say that we continue with that policy. So on this occasion, I would certainly think the planning refusal is the way to go, and I'm sorry that I can't agree with my colleagues in the ward, but on this occasion I think planning are right. We've refused them in the past. It causes problems, and I don't think we should deviate from the policy we have at the present time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. If there are no further questions or comments, then I will move that the recommendation is to refuse.
I'll second it, Chair.
And we have an amendment from Councillor Handibod, seconded by Councillor Cowie. I will just ask Stuart just to make sure that he has the wording correct before we go to the vote.
Okay, so just to recap, we have an amendment proposed by Councillor Handibod and seconded by Councillor Cowie to grant planning permission contrary to the development plan on the grounds that there's been no complaints from neighbouring residents. Can you just clarify the grounds, please?
With it being a retrospective application, it's already been up and running for quite some time, and there has been no, it's not just no complaints, but it's been running as a business, and I suppose the residents are more than happy. In fact, what it brings to the close, and rather than an empty derelict flat.
Thank you. Councillor Cow, are you quite happy with that as an amendment? Thank you. And the motion proposed by Councillor Nelson and seconded by Councillor Convery is to refuse the application for the reasons detailed in the report. The vote is now open. If I could please ask members to cast your vote. Thank you. It would appear that one member has still not cast their vote. If I could please ask all members to ensure that you've voted. Thank you. All members have now cast their vote, which I'll now close. Okay, 18 members have voted in favour of the motion and 3 in favour of the amendment. I therefore declare the motion carried. Sorry, one member has also abstained. Thank you.
Thank you, Fraser. Stuart, sorry. Agenda item number 20 then. There are no items of urgent business, but can I just mention at this point that an awareness session has been organised for elected members for the morning of September the 4th at 10:30 to allow officers an opportunity to update all members on the evidence report that will be presented to the Council meeting on October the 1st, and which is a statutory part of the development plan. This session will also provide an update for officers on the revised decision-making process for planning applications. All members will be invited and in-person attendance is encouraged at the event, but it will be arranged for members to call in. Invites and details will be issued this week, possibly today. Thank you. And can I ask the clerk to stop the recording of the meeting and wish you an enjoyable day. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair.